Hello and welcome to Cherish Ephesians 6:4. This week's article is entitled Rejecting the Church Because You Have Been Hurt by a Pastor or an Elder. So, have you been burned or let down by a pastor or elder in a church that you've attended? Has it soured your view of Christianity? Have you wondered why you go to church at all? Or have you already decided if this is what church is about? I really don't want any part of it. If you've been attending a church or churches for the last few years, it's almost inevitable that you would have had the experience of an elder or a pastor, quote unquote, dropping the ball on some personal matter that you had. Unfortunately, I have had a few, and the mistakes that have been made are usually tied somewhat to their personal attributes. Some pastor elders are disorganized, some fight slothfulness, some are just low energy, and some don't seem to know how to express empathy. Others are poor communicators. Some seem to be disconnected from reality. Some are too impulsive. Some are too aggressive. Some aren't aggressive enough. And some want to run the church like we just are living down the street from John Calvin in circa 1550 AD. As we think about our pastor elders, we should go to the scriptures to see what Jesus has told us in his word. 1, they have qualifications that must be met in order for them to become a pastor elder. See 1 Timothy 3, 1 through 7 and Titus 1, 5 through 9. 2, they are nominated to the position by the congregation and or sitting elders. 3, God sovereignly makes this appointment through this process. 4, pastor elders, as it says in 1 Peter 5, 2, are to shepherd the flock of God. And 5, they are accountable to God himself. As teachers, they have a greater responsibility. James 3, 1. What else has Jesus told us in his word? Well, that every man is deeply marred by both an inherited sinful nature and the ongoing acts of sin. This means that he not only has a heart that rejects God, but he also has a mind that has been severely damaged from original sin and is functionally distorted from how God perfectly created it before sin entered the world. Also, that even the Christian with a new heart has remaining sin in his life that has not yet been completely killed or mortified, and a mind that is still not operating properly. Romans 7, 21 through 23. So with those truths squarely in front of us, should we expect that pastor elders are not going to make a mess of things from time to time? However, be honest. Do you think that they should kind of always get it right? A cursory look at the Bible will once again challenge our wrong-headed thinking. I'm going to list just a few, shall I say, a few of the dumbest things that some of the greatest men of God said or did in their lives. First up, Adam ate the fruit. All-time worst decision in the history of the planet. Genesis 3. 2, how about Moses striking the rock twice out of anger after hearing directly from the Lord just moments before? You can see that in Numbers 20, 10 through 13. Then we have King David committing adultery. Instead of repenting of his sin, he decided to up the ante by having Uriah killed. 2 Samuel 11. And then 4, the infamous Peter saying that he would never deny the Lord, but within a matter of minutes, or I should say hours, did so, and not only once, but 3 times. You can check that out in Luke 22, 31 through 34, or verses 54 through 62. And then finally, Peter scores yet another blunder, with him wimping out for the true gospel by allowing former Jewish beliefs to be added to the gospel and separating himself from the Gentile believers, as we can see in Galatians 2, 11 through 14. None of these men were made perfect during their time here on earth, and all had moments of failing to lead as they should have. Yet they were entrusted by God to have some of the greatest positions of leadership, certainly greater than a pastor of a local church. I'm not making excuses for their sins. They don't need to get a pass from me or from you. They have their dealings with God while they're here on earth and will give a detailed account when they see him face to face. Do you think that they don't realize it when they have blown an opportunity to take care of the flock? Every pastor elder has his time of confession and forgiveness with the Lord. You may want to check out one of them that was written by David after the incident with Bathsheba. You will find it in Psalm 51. It is a soul-wrenching act of pleading with God that is helpful to us as we think about our own confessions of sin before God. Still, I have often wanted to write to a pastor elder and tell them what I think about what they're presently doing, or something about what they've already done. In fact, I have written letters, and as I reflect on the topics, I realize that I have never written a letter that was fundamentally positive. I guess I never had time for that. That's me being facetious. As I think a bit more, I'm sure that I have had elders that wanted to write me a letter about my behavior or whatever else, but thankfully they didn't have time for that. What else has Jesus told us that might apply to the situation of pastor elders making mistakes that hurt people? Well, Jesus has told us to love them. Matthew 23:39. He has told us that there are tares that these men will have to deal with within the church, Matthew 13:24-30, as well as many other difficult situations that require wisdom and prayer. That we will all have trials of every sort, including ones within the church that are designed to make us more like Christ, Romans 8:28. That we should be on guard and not be a pawn for the devil who lives to create division among Christians, Proverbs 6:16-19. And that we are to submit to their authority and support them however we can, 1 Timothy 5:17. So maybe we say, yes, I know all of that, but. And here is where you can fill in the but with whatever it was that the pastor elder did and the hurt and disappointment that came with it. In essence, the response gives evidence that there is still a lack of forgiveness and a root of bitterness. So it's time to go deeper with these two passages. Hebrews 12:14-15 says, "Strive for peace with everyone, and for the holiness without which no one will see the Lord. See to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it many become defiled." And then Colossians 3:12 is a great passage, and it says, "Put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, forgiving each other, as the Lord has forgiven you, so also you must forgive." Well, is that enough? I mean, have you considered all the scriptures that have been placed before you and you still remain angry toward a past or present pastor elder? If so, I can assure you that you are no longer just against that pastor elder, but you are now counting yourself as also being against God. You're in a dangerous place, and questions must be asked. If you claim Christ has forgiven you, how can you withhold forgiveness from another? Additionally, are you willing to trust Christ for your salvation, but not for how he sovereignly acts in the rest of your life, including the pastor elder that he has placed you under? Take note that an unforgiving heart is trending toward bitterness and the beginning of a slippery slope that may lead to a person leaving that particular church, mentally undermining the importance of the church, or leave Christianity altogether. Sometimes people who are in this mindset will construct their own church, one that does not require forgiveness or worship as God has demanded in Hebrews 10:24 and 25. In doing so, they cut themselves off from teaching, accountability, ministry to others, and from authority. I know the flesh is strong and wants you to hold on to the anger and bitterness, but God's grace is stronger. If you find yourself unable to forgive, plead with God to help you. And a final point must be said. My earlier comments about pastors' personalities and flaws does not characterize these men. The fact of the matter is that these men have an abundance of positive attributes, and they do love you. They do pray for you. They do protect you. They do watch over you, and they do teach you. As they deal with many difficult situations, the majority of which we're not even aware of, they handle them with grace and truth 99% of the time. So the question we should be asking ourselves is, how can we do more to support them? Clearly, their greatest need from the flock is prayer. Let's not be slack on such a great matter.